What's a story that you've heard that still gives you chills to this day? 1. My friend told me about something that happened to her when she was younger, about 8 or 9. She was walking home from school and got her key out to let herself into the house. Her single mom worked and came home later on weekdays. As she reached up to put her key in the door, her mom opened it. In dressing gown, having left home sick. Instead of greeting her, she looked straight past my friend and immediately said, "Who are you?" My friend turned around and a man in a long coat hurried back down the path and down the street. Being ill that day had potentially saved her daughter from something potentially horrible happening to her. 2. Was talking to someone who was first on scene to the Virginia Tech MSICR. He told me that although the sight of dead bodies was disturbing, what really stays with him was the sound of all the cell phones ringing from people trying to contact them. 3. My uncle is a firefighter. He always has horrific tales to tell. One still sticks with me. He was first on the scene of a car accident. A log fell off a big transport truck and hit the car following it. The log sheared off the top of the car. Inside was a mom, dad, and child in the back seat. The child was lying down and sleeping when the accident happened. He awoke to the crashing of the car, only to see his parents' lifeless bodies still in their seats with no heads. 4. I worked as a vet tech a couple of years ago, and this man came in to put down his old dog. Standard euthanasia protocol was used. Get a basic history, ask if they want to be present, etc. As a coworker of mine asked the "do you want to be present" part, he responded with yes, because I lost both of my boys last week and I wasn't there for them. And I'll be damned if I'm not there to send off my last living family member. Both of his boys we later found out died overseas. After hearing this, our whole staff went into our euthanasia room and just hugged this man and his dog several minutes past his dog moving on. Out of my years in the field, I've never heard such a heartbroken man to lose his animal. 5. My grandfather's second wife was a sleepwalker, the kind that would get out of bed and do things like make a sandwich in the kitchen. My grandfather became used to it, and whenever he woke up in the middle of the night and she wasn't in bed beside him, he would find her and gently lead her back to bed without waking her up, just as he had been advised. But one night he wakes up and she isn't lying in bed, but instead sitting on the edge of the bed, her back turned to him. He calls her name to ask what's wrong, but she doesn't answer, and he realizes she must be asleep. He can tell that she's doing something, holding something in her lap, but he can't see what it is. He sits up, looks over her shoulder, and sees what she's doing, still in her sleep, loading his revolver. 6. In her early 20s, my mom managed a photography studio in a mall in Scarborough, Ontario. One day my mom is working alone and this guy comes in asking for a photo, but he's being a little weird about it, saying he needs a picture taken of his hip. They did a lot of injury photos for court cases, so my mom assumes this is what he needs and starts loading up the camera. When she looks up, he's got his pants totally off and he's exposing himself. My mom starts laughing hysterically and tells him to get out. She doesn't have time for this nonsense. About an hour later, a girl that was working at the denim store down the hall comes down to tell her about this pervert that took off his pants in the middle of the store, trying to expose himself to the female customers. They both have a laugh. He didn't seem all that menacing, just, obviously, not all there. 2 days later the girl comes running into my mom's studio, pale as a ghost. On the front page of the paper is a sketch of the guy, with the title "Scarborough are pissed." It's pretty crazy to think that she was that close to getting attacked by Paul Bernardo in the peak of his rapist crime spree. 7. This is a story about my dad. One day when he was young, about 10 to 12 maybe, he was playing outside near a small river with a friend. He lived in southern Wisconsin, so it was probably cold as F. While playing, they noticed something strange in the water. It's a capsized canoe, with 2 guys who were probably fishing, hanging on for dear life in the freezing water. He says they had already turned sort of bluish and could barely talk. So the 2 kids get the men out of there and essentially save their lives. It's a big thing in their town. There's a story about it in the local paper and everything. Everyone is happy. Fast forward about 5 years. My dad is on his way to a concert in Chicago with one of his buddies, the same kid as above, in his new car. Of course they were young and stupid and it was the 70s, so who the F wears a seatbelt, right? Well, as they were driving past some bar, where there was some big party going on, a mobile home comes flying out of the parking lot out into the street. The driver obviously didn't look at all and was probably drunk. My dad crashes his car head on into this trailer and totals his car. The fact that they weren't wearing seatbelts saved their lives. The bottom half of the car was crushed. The crash propelled them forward/upward. Luckily nothing happens to him or his friend. Not a scratch, only shock. Just as they get out of the car and try and catch their breath, the propane tank on the trailer explodes and the whole thing catches on fire. Stumbling out of the trailer come 2 guys in flames, screaming/moaning, skin bubbling. They die right there on the spot in front of everyone. People from the bar had gathered round. Turns out these 2 guys were the exact same fishermen he and his friend saved 5 years ago. This is all true, by the way. I didn't believe him at first, but he showed me the articles in the paper and his parents confirmed.